The crowd thought it was part of the show. When Elvis Presley stopped singing mid-song, gripping the microphone stand as if the stage itself were slipping away beneath his feet, thousands of fans leaned forward in anticipation. Some smiled. Some screamed louder. They believed the king was building suspense. But behind Elvis's eyes, something far more dangerous was happening. His vision blurred. His heart raced uncontrollably. And for the first time in his career, the man who had conquered every stage in the world realized he might not make it through the night. What really happened in the minutes before Elvis collapsed on stage? Who saw the warning signs, and ignored them? And what secret fear did Elvis confess backstage, moments after the curtain fell? Stay until the end, because this is the story of the night fame stopped protecting him, and reality finally caught up. The moment Elvis stepped onto the stage, he knew something was wrong. Not wrong in the way shows sometimes were, not a missed cue, not a bad sound mix, not even exhaustion. This was deeper. He felt it in his chest before the lights fully hit him. A tightness. A strange pressure that made it harder to breathe. Still, he smiled. He always smiled. The white jumpsuit shimmered under the stage lights, rhinestones catching fire with every movement. The band started strong. The audience erupted, thousands of voices blending into one deafening roar. To them, Elvis looked invincible. Inside, he was barely holding himself together. As he sang the opening lines, his legs felt heavier than usual. Each step required focus. Each breath felt shallow. Sweat formed faster than it should have, dampening his collar before the second song even ended. He reached instinctively for the familiar comfort, the rhythm, the applause, the way the music usually carried him away from his body and into something larger than pain. But tonight, the music didn't lift him. It trapped him. Between songs, Elvis gripped the microphone stand longer than usual, his knuckles whitening. He glanced toward the wings, searching for Charlie or Red, for someone who might notice the strain in his face, the slight tremor in his hands. No one moved. The show had to go on. The Colonel's voice echoed in his head, as it always did. They didn't come to see you rest, son. They came to see you perform. Elvis swallowed hard and pushed forward. By the fourth song, his heartbeat felt erratic, fast, uneven, frightening. He missed a lyric. Just one word. The crowd didn't notice, but he did. He always did. His mouth felt dry. His vision narrowed at the edges, the lights blurring into halos. He shifted his weight, steadying himself, hoping no one could see how close he was to losing control. Between verses, he leaned down, smiling at the front row, hiding behind charm while fear crept quietly up his spine. Not now, he told himself. You can't fall apart now. But his body didn't listen. A sudden wave of dizziness hit him so hard his knees buckled for half a second. He caught himself just in time, playing it off with a small laugh, a flourish of the hand. The audience cheered. They thought it was charisma. Elvis felt panic. He realized then, with a clarity that terrified him, that this wasn't nerves. This wasn't fatigue. This was his body saying no. As the band launched into the next song, Elvis felt his chest tighten sharply, pain radiating outward, his breath coming in short, uneven bursts. The microphone felt heavier. The stage felt farther away. He glanced toward the wings again. This time, Red noticed. Their eyes locked for a split second, and Red's smile faded. Elvis tried to sing. His voice cracked. The room didn't understand yet. But the silence was coming. And in that moment, under the blinding lights and the weight of 1,000 expectations, Elvis Presley realized something he'd been avoiding for years. The king was running out of strength. And the stage that once saved him might be the place he finally collapsed. The next song began with a familiar rhythm, the kind that usually woke something bright inside him. Elvis had sung it so many times he could do it with his eyes closed, could do it half asleep, half broken, half anything. But tonight, the music didn't carry him. It exposed him. He lifted the microphone to his mouth and forced the first lines out, steady enough to fool anyone who wanted to be fooled. The crowd screamed louder, thrilled by his presence, by the myth, by the illusion that Elvis Presley could never fall. Elvis smiled because he had learned to smile even when he was bleeding inside. But the moment he stepped forward, his heart stumbled in his chest, an ugly, skipping thud that sent a sharp jolt through his ribs. He inhaled and felt the air catch. His lungs refused to fill properly, like someone had tightened a belt around them. He kept singing anyway. He couldn't stop. Not here. Not in front of them. The stage lights seemed hotter than usual, glaring white against his face. Sweat ran down his temples, dampening the sideburns he'd shaped carefully that afternoon. His vision blurred for a split second, then returned in waves, sharp, then soft, as if the world couldn't decide whether to let him stay. He took a step back toward the piano, pretending it was part of the choreography. The band played on. From the wings, Red's jaw tightened. Charlie leaned forward, watching Elvis's posture change, subtle, but unmistakable. The man's shoulders weren't relaxed. His movements weren't fluid. He looked like he was fighting his own body. Elvis turned toward the audience, trying to feed off them the way he always had. Faces and hands and signs surged in the darkness beyond the lights. Women cried. Men shouted. Cameras flashed like tiny explosions. It should have felt like power. Instead, it felt like pressure. Like suffocation. Halfway through the verse, Elvis's mouth went dry, his tongue thick. He swallowed hard and tasted bitterness, something chemical. He wondered, suddenly, what he had taken earlier. How much? Why he hadn't even thought to ask. A spike of fear shot through him. You don't even know what's in you anymore. He tightened his grip around the microphone, knuckles whitening. He looked down for a fraction of a second and realized his hand was shaking so badly the rhinestones on his sleeve were trembling with it. He tried to steady himself with a joke, a playful gesture, a small wave. The crowd screamed again. But the sound hit him like a wall. His ears rang. Then everything shifted. A wave of dizziness rolled through him so violently it felt like the floor moved. Elvis's knees buckled, this time not for a second, not for a dramatic flare, but for real. He stumbled. A sharp gasp rose from the front rows. Elvis caught the edge of the piano with his free hand, fingers clamping down as if his life depended on it. The band kept playing for a heartbeat longer, confused, waiting for him to recover. He tried to laugh. Tried to lift his head. But his vision narrowed into a tunnel. The lights blurred into a bright smear. The audience became a dark ocean. The music sounded far away, distorted, like it was coming from another room. Elvis opened his mouth to sing the next line. No sound came out. It wasn't that he forgot. It wasn't stage fright. His body simply refused. He felt a sudden cold sweat break across his skin. His chest tightened again, sharper now, and for the first time that night, he thought, not dramatically, not poetically, but with raw terror. I might die up here. The thought hit him like a slap. He tried to step back, to breathe, to regain control. But his legs gave way. Elvis Presley collapsed. The microphone slipped from his hand and hit the stage floor with a loud, jarring crack that cut through the music like a gunshot. The band faltered. The drummer missed a beat. The guitar line died in confusion. The room froze. For one long second, the crowd didn't understand what they were seeing. Some fans laughed nervously, thinking it was part of the act. Then they saw his face. Elvis lay on his side, one arm curled toward his chest, eyes half open but unfocused. His mouth moved soundlessly, trying to breathe. His chest rose too fast, then stalled, as if his body couldn't decide how to stay alive. Screams erupted. Elvis. Oh my God. Call somebody. Charlie sprinted onto the stage, abandoning every rule he'd ever been given. Red followed, shoving past a stagehand. Security rushed forward, panicked, uncertain. From the wings, Colonel Parker stepped closer, but he didn't run. He didn't panic the way the audience did. He stared, calculating. Charlie dropped to his knees beside Elvis, hands trembling as he tried to lift his head gently. Elvis, hey, look at me. Elvis's eyes fluttered, trying to focus. Charlie leaned in, close enough that only Elvis could hear him over the chaos. Can you breathe? Blink if you can hear me, buddy. Elvis blinked once. Weak. Barely there. Charlie's throat tightened. Red looked up at the crowd, people crying, screaming, standing, hands over mouths. A security guard shouted, "Get him off stage." But Charlie shook his head, fierce. Not like this, careful. Elvis's lips parted. A whisper slipped out, thin as smoke. I can't. Charlie's eyes filled with tears. Hold on, hold on. And as the stage lights burned over Elvis's pale face, one terrifying truth settled into the room like ash. The king wasn't performing anymore. He was fighting for his life. Elvis came back to consciousness slowly, as if he were swimming up from the bottom of a dark, endless pool. At first, there was only sound, muffled voices, hurried footsteps, the distant echo of panic still vibrating somewhere beyond the walls. Then came the smell, antiseptic, sweat, something metallic. And finally, the light, softer than the stage, warmer, pulsing gently against his eyelids. He opened his eyes. The ceiling above him was unfamiliar for a second. Plain. Too close. Then it clicked. The dressing room. His throat burned as if he'd swallowed fire. He tried to sit up, but a firm hand pressed gently against his chest. Easy, Charlie's voice said, close and strained. Don't move yet. Elvis groaned softly. His entire body felt heavy, useless, like it no longer belonged to him. He became painfully aware of the oxygen mask over his face, the Ford taped to his arm, the sweat-soaked jumpsuit clinging to his skin. What happened? He murmured. Charlie hesitated, exchanging a glance with Red, who stood near the door, arms crossed tight like he was holding himself together by force. You collapsed, Charlie said quietly. Right there on stage. The words landed slowly. Collapsed. Elvis closed his eyes again, shame washing over him even before fear did. Did I scare them? He asked. Charlie swallowed. Yeah, buddy. You did. Elvis turned his head slightly, wincing as pain flared behind his eyes. I didn't mean to, he whispered. I swear I didn't. Red stepped forward, his voice rough. We know. But that don't change what almost happened. Elvis breathed shallowly, his chest tight with more than just physical pain now. He stared at the wall, where his shadow trembled faintly with each breath. I couldn't feel my legs, he said after a moment. Everything went fuzzy. Like I was disappearing. Charlie sat on the edge of the couch beside him. You scared the hell out of us. Elvis let out a weak, humorless breath. Guess the king ain't so mighty after all. No one laughed. The silence stretched until Elvis shifted uncomfortably, his fingers curling weakly around the edge of the couch. Charlie, he said. Yeah. Elvis swallowed hard. If I'd died out there, his voice faltered. Would they have kept playing the tape? Told the band to finish the song. Charlie's eyes burned. Don't talk like that. But it's true, ain't it? Elvis whispered. The show's gotta go on. Even if the singer don't. Red's jaw clenched. You're not a machine, Elvis closed his eyes. That's what they tell me, he said quietly. That I'm built for this. That I can take it. That I don't need rest, or sleep, or quiet. Just one more show. One more city. He opened his eyes again, glassy with exhaustion. I'm tired, he admitted. The words came out softer than anything he'd ever said on a microphone. I'm so damn tired. Charlie leaned closer. Then we stop. We cancel. We get you help. Elvis shook his head weakly. They won't let me. They don't get to decide that, Red snapped. Elvis's gaze flicked toward the closed door. He does. They didn't need to say his name. Everyone in the room felt it, the invisible presence, the pressure, the contracts and consequences hanging in the air. Elvis, Charlie said carefully, how much did you take tonight? Elvis didn't answer. Charlie's heart dropped. Elvis licked his dry lips. I don't remember, he whispered. The room went still. Red stared at him. You don't remember? Elvis shook his head, shame burning through him now. I just took what they gave me, he said. For sleep. For the nerves. For the pain in my back. For the pain in my head. I didn't count. I didn't ask. Charlie's hands trembled. Who gave it to you? Elvis hesitated. Then, barely above a whisper. Doc said it was fine. Red exploded. That son of a... Charlie raised a hand, stopping him, eyes never leaving Elvis. Elvis, listen to me. That's not okay. That's how people die. Elvis's eyes filled suddenly, tears spilling over without warning. I know, he whispered. I think I wanted to disappear for a little while. Just not like that. Charlie felt his chest tighten. Why didn't you say anything? He asked gently. Elvis turned his face away, tears sliding into his hairline. Because if I stop, he said, voice breaking, everything stops. The tours. The money. The promises. The people dependent on me. He took a shaky breath. And because if I stop long enough to feel, I don't know if I can handle what's underneath. Red's anger softened into something else, fear. Elvis, he said quietly, you almost died tonight. Elvis nodded once, barely. I know. The door opened slightly. A shadow filled the frame. The Colonel. His voice came in smooth, controlled, already spinning the story. Elvis, son, the crowd's upset, but we can manage this. We'll say it was exhaustion. A fainting spell. No need to make it bigger than it is. Elvis stared at the door. For the first time that night, something inside him shifted, not panic, not fear. Clarity. He realized then that if he stayed silent, this would happen again. And next time, there might be no waking up in a dressing room. Charlie watched Elvis's face change, watched his jaw tighten, his eyes harden just slightly. Elvis, he whispered. Elvis took a slow, careful breath. Get him out, Elvis said hoarsely. The Colonel paused. What? I said get him out, Elvis repeated, louder this time. I ain't talkin' business tonight. The room went dead quiet. Red moved toward the door. For the first time in years, Elvis Presley wasn't afraid of the consequences. Because lying there, with wires on his arm and his heart still racing, he finally understood something terrifying and simple. If he didn't take control now, there wouldn't be another chance. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the pain and the fear, a decision was beginning to form. The door closed softly behind the Colonel, but the echo of his presence lingered in the room like a bad smell that refused to fade. Elvis lay there in silence, listening to his own breathing. It came unevenly now, not panicked, but fragile, as if his body were reminding him how close he'd come to not breathing at all. Charlie stayed seated beside him. Red leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the floor. No one spoke. Elvis stared at the ceiling, watching the shadows shift as someone passed outside the door. For years, he had filled silence with noise, music, laughter, pills, people. But now there was nowhere to hide. "I thought I was stronger than this," Elvis said suddenly. His voice sounded smaller than he expected. Charlie didn't answer right away. He knew better. "I really did," Elvis continued. "I thought I could outrun it. The tiredness. The fear. The loneliness. I figured if I just kept moving, it couldn't catch me." He swallowed, his throat tightening. "But it caught me anyway. Right there in front of everybody." Red pushed off the wall. Nobody thinks less of you for what happened." Elvis let out a short, bitter laugh. "I do." Charlie leaned closer. "Why?" Elvis turned his head slightly, meeting Charlie's eyes. "Because I promised myself I'd never be weak like that," he said. "I watched my daddy break. Watched him lose jobs, lose hope, lose himself. I told myself I'd be different. I'd be in control." His hand curled weakly on the couch. "And now look at me. Grown man. King of rock and roll. Can't even trust his own body to stand up." Charlie felt his chest ache. "You didn't fail," Charlie said quietly. "You survived." Elvis shook his head. "That ain't the same thing." Red spoke softly now. "You don't gotta do this alone." Elvis's eyes drifted to the mirror across the room. His reflection looked pale, exhausted, stripped of glamour. Without the lights, without the crowd, he was just a man lying on a couch with wires taped to his arm. He stared at himself like he was meeting a stranger. "Do you know what scares me the most?" Elvis asked. Charlie waited. "That when I close my eyes out there, part of me was relieved," Elvis admitted. "Just for a second. No noise. No expectations. No Elvis Presley." The words landed heavy. Red's jaw tightened. "That don't mean you wanted to die." "I know," Elvis said. "But it means I didn't want to live like this anymore." Charlie felt his throat burn. Elvis shifted slightly, wincing as pain shot through his back. "I don't remember when I stopped enjoying things," he went on. "Music used to feel like freedom. Now it feels like an obligation. Like something I owe the world instead of something that belongs to me." He closed his eyes. "And the pills, they started as help. Just a little sleep. A little calm. Somewhere along the way, they became the only way I knew how to get through a day." Charlie reached for Elvis's hand, gripping it firmly. "That doesn't make you weak," he said. "It makes you human." Elvis opened his eyes again, moisture gathering at the corners. "I don't want to die on a stage," he whispered. "I don't want to be remembered like that. I don't want to leave Lisa wondering why her daddy chose the crowd over coming home." Red swallowed hard. "You don't have to," Red said. "Not if you stop now." Elvis breathed slowly, deliberately, feeling the air move in and out of his chest. He'd taken that for granted for too long. "I don't know how to stop," he admitted. "Every time I try, somebody's there telling me I can't. That I shouldn't. That people are counting on me." Charlie leaned in, voice steady. "Then tonight has to be the night you stop listening to everyone else." Elvis stared at him. "You think I can really change?" Charlie didn't hesitate. "I know you can." Red nodded. "But you gotta want it more than you want the applause." The room fell quiet again. Elvis thought about the moment he'd collapsed, the fear in Charlie's eyes, the sound of the microphone hitting the floor, the screams from the crowd. He thought about Lisa's face. Priscilla's voice. His mother's memory. "I don't want to be numb anymore," he said softly. "Even if feeling hurts." Charlie squeezed his hand. "That's the bravest thing you've said all night." Elvis closed his eyes, not in exhaustion this time, but in something closer to acceptance. For the first time, he murmured, "I'm scared of what'll happen if I don't change." Red stepped forward. "Then let's make sure you don't go back out there like nothing happened." Elvis opened his eyes again. "No more pretendin'," he said. "Not tonight. Not ever again." Charlie nodded, emotion thick in his voice. "Then we start here." Elvis lay back, staring at the ceiling one last time. The man in the mirror had scared him. But for the first time, he didn't look away. And somewhere beneath the fear, beneath the pain, beneath the weight of a crown that had grown too heavy to wear, Elvis Presley chose to stay alive. The first thing Elvis noticed the next morning was the quiet. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that settles gently around you. This silence felt tense, watchful, like a held breath. Graceland was awake, but subdued. Staff moved carefully, voices low, eyes avoiding his room as if the walls themselves knew something had shifted. Elvis sat on the edge of the bed, still in yesterday's clothes, staring at his hands. They were steady now. That frightened him more than the collapse. Charlie stood by the window, arms folded. Red leaned against the dresser, jaw tight. Neither of them had slept much. "They're already Callan," Charlie said finally. "Press. Management. The label." Elvis nodded slowly. He'd expected that. "What are they sayin'?" he asked. Charlie hesitated. "They want a statement. They wanna say it was heat exhaustion. Dehydration. Nothin' serious." Elvis let out a long breath through his nose. "And the Colonel?" Red snorted. "He's furious." That didn't surprise him either. "Elvis," Charlie said carefully, "once this goes public, once you admit something was wrong, they're gonna come after you hard. Cancelled shows mean lawsuits. Contracts. Money." Elvis looked up. "And if I pretend it didn't happen?" Charlie met his eyes. "Then this keeps happening. Until one day you don't wake up in a dressing room." The words landed heavy. Elvis stood slowly, joints aching, back stiff. He walked toward the mirror and stared at his reflection again. He looked older than he remembered. Thinner. Tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. "I built my whole life around not letting people down," he said quietly. "Fans. Family. Everybody." Red stepped closer. "You ain't letting anybody down by staying alive." Elvis shook his head. "That ain't how they'll see it." As if summoned by his thoughts, the phone rang. Charlie answered it. Yes, he's awake." "No, he's not taking calls right now." The voice on the other end grew louder. Charlie pulled the receiver away, grimacing. "It's him," Charlie mouthed. Elvis closed his eyes. "Put him on," he said. Charlie hesitated. "You sure?" Elvis nodded. "I gotta do this." Charlie handed him the phone. "Elvis," the Colonel's voice boomed through the line, smooth but sharp underneath. "You caused a panic last night. Fans think you're dying. That's bad for business." Elvis tightened his grip on the receiver. "I almost did die," he said calmly. A pause. "That's exaggeration," Parker snapped. "You were tired. That's all. We'll spin it." "No," Elvis said. Another pause, longer this time. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean we're canceling the rest of the shows," Elvis replied. "I'm not going back on stage like nothing happened." The Colonel's voice hardened. "You don't get to decide that." Elvis felt his heart start to race, but this time, he breathed through it. "I just did." The silence on the other end was dangerous. "You walk away now," Parker said slowly, "and you lose millions. You disappoint thousands. You look weak." Elvis swallowed. I already collapsed in front of M, he said. Ain't nothin' weaker than pretendin' I'm fine when I'm not. You owe me, Parker hissed. You owe this machine you built. Elvis closed his eyes, thinking of the stage floor, the fear, the moment he couldn't breathe. I don't owe anybody my life, he said quietly. The line went dead. Elvis lowered the phone. Charlie stared at him. You okay? Elvis nodded, though his hands shook slightly. I think that might have cost me everything, he admitted. Red shook his head. No. It might have saved you. Elvis sat back down heavily. What happens now? He asked. Charlie took a breath. Now we tell the truth. Or at least enough of it. You get real doctors. Real rest. And you stay off that stage until your body stops begging you to slow down. Elvis stared at the floor. And if I can't come back? The question was barely audible. Charlie's voice softened. Then you find out who you are without the crown. Elvis thought of life without applause. Without lights. Without being needed every second. It terrified him. But not as much as dying had. He leaned back, closing his eyes. For the first time, he said, I don't know what my future looks like. Red smiled faintly. That's okay. Means it ain't already written. Elvis nodded slowly. Outside, the sun rose higher over Graceland. Inside, the king sat quietly, learning what it felt like to choose himself, even when the cost was everything he'd built. The house felt different once the phone stopped ringing. By late afternoon, Graceland had settled into an uneasy calm. No reporters at the gates yet. No official statements released. Just the soft hum of air conditioning, distant footsteps, and the occasional clink of a glass in the kitchen. Elvis sat alone in the den, the curtains half drawn, letting in a thin strip of Tennessee sunlight that cut across the floor. He wore jeans and a loose shirt now, his jumpsuit folded somewhere out of sight, like a skin he wasn't ready to put back on. For the first time in years, there was nowhere he had to be. That thought both comforted and terrified him. He stared at the television without really seeing it, replaying the night in his mind, the heat of the lights, the sudden weakness, the sound of the microphone hitting the stage. He could still hear the crowd screaming his name, not in love, but in fear. They had never screamed like that before. A soft knock broke the silence. Charlie stepped in carefully, holding 2 cups of coffee. Figured you might want something real, he said, offering one. Elvis took it, wrapping his hands around the warmth. Thanks. They sat in silence for a moment. You know they're already writin' the story, Charlie said gently. Some folks say you fainted. Some say it was nerves. Others, worse. Elvis nodded. They always gotta make sense of it somehow. Charlie studied him. And you? How you makin' sense of it? Elvis stared into the coffee. I think my body finally told the truth my mouth wouldn't, he said. I've been lying to myself for a long time. Charlie smiled sadly. Most people do. They just don't do it in front of thousands. Elvis let out a small, tired laugh. Red appeared in the doorway, quieter than usual. Lisa's a skin, for you. Elvis's heart tightened. In her room? Red nodded. Elvis stood slowly, his movements careful now, not because he was weak, but because he was listening. Lisa sat cross-legged on the floor, coloring, her tongue poking out slightly in concentration. When she saw him, she jumped up. Daddy! He knelt and opened his arms, and she ran straight into them. He held her longer than usual, breathing in the smell of her hair, the warmth of her small body. You scared me, she said softly. I know, he whispered. I'm sorry, sweetheart. She pulled back just enough to look at his face. You sick? A little, he admitted. But I'm gonna get better. She studied him, serious in the way only children can be. You promise? He hesitated, just a second, then nodded. I promise I'm gonna try. Real hard. She seemed satisfied with that and hugged him again. As she went back to her crayons, Elvis sat on the bed beside her, watching her small hands move across the paper. For years, he'd thought being there for her meant providing everything money could buy. Now he understood it meant something else entirely. Being present. Later, alone again, Elvis stood in front of the mirror in his bedroom. No makeup. No stage lights. Just a man looking back at himself. You almost didn't make it, he said quietly to his reflection. The man in the mirror didn't argue. I don't know how to live without the stage, Elvis continued. But I know I don't want to die on it. He touched his chest lightly, feeling the steady beat beneath his hand. It felt like a gift. That night, as the house grew quiet, Elvis lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The silence no longer felt like an enemy. It felt like space, fragile, uncertain, but necessary. Tomorrow would bring consequences. Contracts. Headlines. Pressure to return, to explain, to perform. But tonight, there was only breath. Only heartbeat. Only the strange, unfamiliar feeling of choosing life. Somewhere far away, fans would wait for him. Some would forgive. Some wouldn't. But for the first time in his life, Elvis Presley wasn't thinking about what the world wanted from him. He was thinking about how to stay. And in the darkness of Graceland, with the crown set aside and the applause finally gone, the king closed his eyes, not to escape, but to rest. Not as a legend. But as a man who had survived the night. And was brave enough to face the morning.